patterns has been added since C#7, and then C#8 introduced additional patterns, and Microsoft is carrying on adding, improving the patterns matching experience in C#. So this is a small one. You can have type as a pattern. So if you wanted to, for example, use a switch expression and you wanted to match on a type, you still have to give it a name. And if you don't use it if you don't use it, you have to call it underscore, for example. But why? If you don't really need it, why do you need to add an underscore after the type? Yeah, there was no need for that. It was just a limitation of the compiler. This limitation now is not there anymore. You can just say square and then circle, and you don't need to specify an underscore. Just as well, it's most stuff that remove some annoying things in the code. Relational patterns are interesting. So if you want to do a switch statement, up until now you had to use a pattern, but there was no way to use like ranges to match particular variables. So you couldn't use a switch statement to do that. You had to do like using a series of if statement, for example. You can see like life stage at age, you give an age, and based on where the age lives, you return a particular string. Now with the relational patterns, you can simply do, use lower or lower than equals, greater or greater than equals, and you can actually immediately use a pattern in a switch expression or in an if statement without having to, to use the variable every single time. So this, I think, is quite useful. This is another pattern, the not pattern. So C# had the is operator that allows you to, check if a reference is of a particular type and return a Boolean. There was no way to check if a reference was not of a particular type. So you had to like wrap the expression in a parenthesis and add a not before. So creating a little bit weird syntax. I never liked that. So likely Microsoft in C#9 added the ability to add is not to make sure that a particular reference type is not of a particular type. Small improvement. Let's make the code more readable. So I always welcome this sort of changes from Microsoft to make C# even more expressive. Then Microsoft also added patterns matching combinators. So you can see on the top, isLetter is implemented, as you would expect. However, you need to repeat the variable name every single time. C is greater than A, C is lower than Z, and so on. With matching combinators, you can use and or, and you don't need to repeat the variable name every single time. You can say C is, and then you can say greater than A and lower than Z. You can even use parentheses to specify, the order of matching, and you don't need to repeat the variable every single time. Obviously, this example is probably not the best. I'm not sure which of the two I like the most. With pattern matching, you need to understand that you need to always use common sense if the code is more readable or not. So I leave that to you to decide when the code is more readable or not. Another thing is that if you use a type pattern and you capture the variable and use the AND combinator, everything on the right will basically use the same type as the left-hand side. So, for example, you can see that his single digit here is doing O is int I, and then he's using I on the right of the expression. Now, if you do O is int, you don't even need to specify the variable anymore. You can just simply use the combinators to do your check. You don't even need to create another name for the casted object, if you see what I mean. So again, slightly small improvements that might be more readable in some situations, especially in switch expression. I also haven't used this feature yet in production code, but I can imagine this feature to be particularly useful in switch expression, as I've shown you before with the relational patterns. But is obviously an addition to the language.